So today, and for listeners who are just super, super curious and want to get into the mind of an entrepreneur who has built truly one of the most successful ed tech companies on this planet.
Today, the degree is the only credential that we use. And the problem is that degrees are failing us.
If we can consume education course by course, it empowers us.
There's not a CEO in the world who can tell you what skills they have and what skills they need.
Life is learning, and we leave so much of it unrecognized.
We're going to touch on some books that have really shaped Dave's career. Some of these are timeless classics from the 60s. Some of these are lesser known deep cuts from the 90s. But they've really, really shaped and informed, Dave, how you feel about the education system, money, success, and then how to do hard, ambitious things, how to really sit with uncertainty and pain, and also how to build a company out of nothing. Welcome back to Bookwise from BookClub.com. I am your host, Britt Brewer. And today, it's always such a distinct pleasure to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the co-founder of BookClub. The reason why I am sitting in this very big hotel chair in the Big Easy, he is best known as the co-founder and CEO of Degreed, Mr. David Blake. David Bartholomew Ulysses S. Blake. Actually, I don't know what your middle name is.
Andrew.
Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Dave Andrew Blake. I go by my middle name. I think you know this.
Britt. I did not know this. Britt is
my middle name. My first name is Delaney.
I did know that.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because whatever. All the HR stuff. I saw Delaney many times.
You're like, who the hell is this? So Dave, you talk about your life work and your personal mission as, and in your words, you want to create an educational system that will drive the cost of learning to zero, promote universal access to education, and challenge people's work view and scale empathy, among other things. And to me, that sounds like you want to really democratize education.
Yeah.
So with that sort of personal and professional motto and driving force, you started a company called Degreed in 2012. Degreed, for those who don't know, is the first and leading learning experience platform, which I think in the biz, they call them LXPs. And today, Dave, you have more than 400 organizational clients in more than 200 countries. And in 2020, you started the Future of Work Venture Studio with the idea that work is inherently human, which is true, although all the AI, you would think that maybe that's not true, but that the future of work is actually about people. So, that same year in 2020, you went on to co-found BookClub. And here we are on the BookClub podcast.
I mean, my life turned when I was about 17.
Yeah.
And that's what I trace back to this passion around education. And I tell people I am an education reformer by choice. I am an entrepreneur by necessity. The passion of my life has been to build a model and a system of lifelong education where people get credit for everything they learn, all modalities, all sources. It shouldn't be about where you went to university and what degree you have. That is inclusive of our lifelong education, but we should exist in a world where it doesn't matter which path you walked, just what skills do you have, what do you know, irrespective of how or where you got them. That's my life's mission, passion. And it came kind of the hinging point on it all was I am a teenager. I am working very hard to be the quintessential college applicant. The grades, the AP courses, the varsity sports, the service, I worked, I was a Boy Scout, I was on yearbook, I was in student council. I mean, just sort of checking all of the boxes.
Yeah.
as such, I studied hard, worked hard, and knew very well the importance of the ACT. I studied for it. I took test prep. And when I sat for it, I scored, well. It isn't that at all. But I remember just sitting down as a 17-year-old at American Fork High School. It's like 9:30 a.m. on a Saturday. We're in the gymnasium in the rows of desks taking this test. And I just looked around and it was just like, this can't be it. Like, for real, all the grownups got together and decided that this test was like the best way they could come up with to sort all of us, 17-year-olds in and out of our futures. And it just seems so crazy to me. It's like, I studied for this test, but none of my teachers prepared me for this test. And I bet there's a whole bunch of us in this room that didn't do any test prep. And how fair is that? And I was just like, this is crazy. 3 hours is going to determine all of our futures. And like, why do we do it this way? Where did it come from? And so when I got done taking the test, it's the first and only time I ever talked to my high school guidance counselor. I went in, got an appointment, talked to my high school guidance counselor, and asked, where did the test come from? And they did not know. They, of course, as a high school guidance counselor, knew the importance of the test. They knew about test prep. They knew but they did not know the history of the test. And so I went to the library, not to Google, to the library. Is just the break point. Google did exist, was there
microfiche in there? Was there any or there, like LexisNexis?
Yeah, I was about 3 years too young for LexisNexis, but that's about where the world is at in this moment.
Okay.
I go to my rather rural, small, public library, and they do not have any books on the history of the SAT or the ACT. And I didn't know the term at the time, but I was essentially looking for high stakes testing. Like, where did it all come from? But there were some books on our history of education. And so I started to read those. And I'll sort of end this part of the story here, which is I had an epiphany, which is those books are the first thing I had ever read that a teacher hadn't assigned to me.
Wow.
And I appreciated in that moment, here I am graduating at the top of my class, that I was indeed, truly, an excellent student, and also equally true, a shitty learner.
Yeah. Wow.
I was not a good learner.
Dave, I feel like I could go on so many different crazy tangents with you. But we are not doing ayahuasca in the desert. We are doing a podcast. Though that does sound very fun. So, okay. All of your thoughts on education and being a lifelong learner bring us to books, because I've heard you say this before. Some of what you were talking about, or I think maybe one of the earlier books. I think early. I don't know. Did you discover it in the 90s? Yeah. Is Successful Intelligence by Robert Sternberg, which came out in 1996. A great year. I don't know if Vertical Horizon had their one hit, but they were about to.
Yeah. Yeah, this book, this is not like a very popular book. Think of this as like the whole concept of EQ. We now have that shorthand, emotional intelligence.
The Daniel Goleman classic.
Exactly. This is like the same idea, the same type of research, got to the same sort of findings all on his own, published a book, and didn't have as good of a publisher. Like, that's kind of this book. It is all about the fact that, like, in our lives, success is determined by many things besides just sort of raw, like, IQ and intellectual horsepower.
Yeah.
And I was reading this kind of right in that same moment in sequence. And, it just really kind of cut through, because I was all in on like, life, this game I'm playing, this game I'm trying to perfect is essentially all about intellectual horsepower and just putting it on the test. And then this book is like stepping back and saying like, no, if you actually look at people who are happy, who have led well-rounded, engaged, even financially successful lives, it is as much about kind of all of these other types of, attributes as it is about, just your IQ. So it was very influential. It kind of pierced the bubble for me. Piercing that bubble opened up how I saw life and my ambitions and goals and what I wanted. And it absolutely, really did transform kind of the trajectory my life would take.
I love it. I love that this is your sort of like indie underground, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they never quite broke through the majors, but true heads know. Amazing. All right. Well, we're going to jump to the mid 2010s, zero interest rates. Just every startup was just taking baths in money, Scrooge McDuck style. And you've got The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, which came out in 2014.
Yeah. So, by the time I read that, Degreed, so I got through university, it spit me out the conveyor belt, went in the game. I was still kind of like fighting that, but didn't really know where to go. So I econ undergrad, management consultant, and then I took my shot. I broke into ed tech and moved into my parents' basement with my young family, joined a startup, went on that ride. I was not the founder. I was a sort of early team member. That business got sold. There was no windfall to me. I didn't have the ownership. So, still kind of just grinding it out, just saving my pennies, but wanted to start my own startup at this point. And so started Degreed in 2012. And, when I started Degreed, we'd been living in my parents' basement on a startup salary. Really it was saving pennies, not even nickels. It was just scraping kind of a little bit together to try and create, a little bit of personal runway to be able to take a shot. And when I started Degreed, we had enough savings to pay our rent for 3 months, and that's it. If we were going to eat food, the runway was going to be something less than 3 months. And so, started Degreed. And I framed that just to say, this was the shot, this dream, this ambition of working on lifelong education, of finding a fulcrum and a lever in the world and making it nudge a little bit forward the way I hoped it could. So a couple of years into the Degreed journey, and by that point, Degreed had found its footing. But there was something about reading that just felt, very seen of this. There's kind of no way through the startup journey. And you can attest to this now, having been on the BookClub journey. There's no straight path through. The hard thing about hard things is it's a hard thing. And if you're going to pick up one of these ideas and try and, birth it into the world, inevitably, there's just no one has a straight line. It just is going to be hard. And that's kind of the hard thing about hard things. And so it just felt very seen. It helped me kind of hold on to myself. The resonance that it had with me is almost entirely emotional.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And we have this whole slogan, leaders are readers, but I sometimes think about how, and not to be like smallest violin, but it is lonely, right? It is a lonely job. You have a lot of responsibilities. And so I wonder if reading about another leader and all the things that he went through made you feel a little less lonely in some of the stuff that you were having to do.
We moved around as a family when I was young, and I landed in fourth grade with a new school and a pretty vicious bully, and to go back to that moment in my life, it was books. I turned to books, and books are, I found adventure as a young kid in books. I found, sort of the characters that it's like listening to podcasts today, it's this one-way friendship, but, I found friends in books and, absolutely. So yeah, in my lifetime, you reach for books for different reasons. Sometimes it's very practical, sometimes it's to be challenged and to push open our worldview.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is just for solace and, to know that someone out there has had it worse than you did, has been able to overcome great things and in so doing, believe that we can too.
Oh my God. I'm legit kind of just choked up about that. That's such a beautiful way to, well, that is a good segue over to Profiles in Courage. Is this by John F. Kennedy? Did he actually write this?
He did. Yeah. And, best I understand, like, yes, he did actually write it himself. I think he did have a kind of a co-author research assistant. Yeah.
So Dave, I didn't know that you do this, but you auto-tuned the "Go to the Moon" speech as part of the launch of Degreed.
Moon and investigate and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. We choose to go to the moon and investigate and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Wow, I love this.
You know, to take you back, what is happening in my life when I did the JFK auto-tune, we're like 7-8 months into the Degreed journey. As you recall from earlier, I said we had like 3 months of runway. So we are out of money. I'm living on credit card debt. I'm paying my first 1-2 employees their salaries on my credit cards. I mean, we are just holding on by a thread. We do a crowdfunding campaign to keep the lights on. And honestly, it's like, you know, when the shit is piling up, what makes you think to go auto-tune JFK? But like a great book, it's, you know, in these hard moments in life, you need to hold on to something. And JFK has become something of a hero to me. And you know, not because it is easy, but because it is hard, was, you know, honestly something that I like reached towards in that moment to just, you know, like gonna make it through, because, you know, it's not gonna be easy. But you know, because that goal will serve the best of our energies and skills, you know, and you need to hold on to something. Yeah. JFK does Lincoln.
Yeah, Britt, crack a book. Okay, that's. Yeah, JFK does Lincoln. That was a bit. I planned on that.
I like it. That can be our next podcast. JFK does, and we'll go through all the moments in history and do it as JFK. So,
Mr. Gorbachev.
There you go. That one lands straight. That's just fairway. You got it.
Well, speaking of necessity being the mother of invention, another book that is near and dear to you in your life and career, The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko. Another banger from 1996. Better Than Ezra was kicking it, and so was this book.
Oh my gosh. Yep. Better Than Ezra, man. This time of year is my favorite. Better Than Ezra.
That's a real Better Than Ezra. Yeah, that's a true heads no. Okay. All right.
This one, you know, you actually will go. It's probably still on the table at Barnes & Noble if you walk in there today. I mean, it became something of kind of like one of the, you know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's kind of in the personal finance classics. The thesis of the book is like, you know, the millionaires aren't the doctors and the lawyers. The millionaires are the farmer who clips coupons and has just saved and worked hard their whole life. Yeah. And like, that's kind of the thesis of the book. But what really, you know, and so it was also one of these things that gave me permission to like get off the conveyor belt, or not just believe that my life was going to be. And the more stuff you have, the more work it is. And like, just be careful. Like, don't let consumerism, you know, don't think that buying shit is the reflection of wealth and happiness and the good life. And if anything, it tells a story of like this boss who, after like 50 years, the employees all chipped in and bought him a car on his like 65th birthday retirement party. And he thanked them graciously, and the next day sold the car, because he just, you know, was so protective of the not letting sort of the material things into his life that were then going to, you know, require his time, energy, upkeep. And, you know,
this feels almost like a very like a Buddhist perspective in a way.
But you don't expect it from the millionaire next door, you know, 1997 personal finance, American peak, you know, consumerism. But yeah, it's kind of buried in there is this, you know, and it really has, you know, that one's really shaped me.
Okay. This brings us drum roll. What is a drum roll? So the last one it's a little controversial. Not gonna lie, not controversial to me. Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson came out last year. Let's get into it. So Dave, I'm gonna pull up a clip, and you are a tech disruptor. I'm gonna say it. You don't have to say it, but I said it. And Elon is, though, a different kind of tech disruptor. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this before we close out this episode. So, producer Mike, fire it up.
Then I saw this Elon Musk approach to turning culture around, where you basically let off a grenade in the building.
Totally.
Do you believe there's merit in that approach?
Yes, but I also believe there's a big old downside. And like everything with Elon Musk, including the shooting off of the rockets, you get amazing things happen, but also rubble in the wake and damage in the wake and personal damage. At Tesla, he did that once. There's a guy, John McNeil, in the book, who was president of Tesla. Another couple of people, they all say it, which is, maybe that's the price you have to pay if you want to be this disruptive. But is it a price that I want to pay? The answer is no. And maybe it's too high of a price, causing so much emotional turmoil.
All right, DB, parting thoughts.
I have contemplated this on my own. I remember having a debate with my family, at the feet of the David about, it's often taken like immense sacrifice to do the things that the world will remember. And is it worth like being a absentee father, to change the world? And like having that debate, I remember that debate as even a young kid.
Yeah.
And, I suppose I will add, for better and for worse, and for all it adds up to, will add my, name to Walter Isaacson's in that, like, is it worth it to me? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
I believe, I still hold up that, I'm willing to take it as far as I can go while having my personal integrity intact, creating a culture that I can be as proud of as the actual impact and results.
Yeah.
And then the hard truth is, I think that limits, does limit what type, the level of accomplishment one might be able to hope to achieve in a lifetime. I think it does. I think it's a trade-off.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I don't know if everybody has to be sort of a Steve Jobs who finds out that he, is about to be a father and is pissed, because that is extreme.
Gonna ruin everything. Yeah.
But also the impact that he had on the world is, for better or worse, is seismic. So, man, yeah. Well, Dave, I'm glad that you chose the the route of the kind person, because that means that you're here talking with me today. Or maybe you would, but you would have been like dropping F-bombs and, it would have been a different experience.
Full loop, hard thing about hard things.
Yeah.
As Britt and I were able to push on book club together for the first chapters. I have since stepped down and continue on as a member of the board, but it's never a straight line. So very, just incredibly proud of what you all are building. I literally did a bookclub.com book club today with the Degreed executive team. Love bringing books alive for people, love being able to take the wisdoms and apply it, in my life, in my work, with my team. And, education reformer by choice, entrepreneur by necessity. It has always been about being a great learner and helping others. And I know bookclub.com is doing that for me.
Oh, look at that plug. Look at that plug, Dave. You're putting me to shame. That was a sweet, sweet plug. Dave, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking about Successful Intelligence by Robert Sternberg, The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, Profiles in Courage by John F. Kennedy Jr., The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko, and Elon Musk by Walter Isaacson. Great titles, great conversation. Dave, thank you for joining me for Bookwise.
Thank you for having me back, and appreciate being here.